Welcome into Off the Hook Sports. I am Caleb Calhoun. Again, Dave Hooker is off today. This will be our last show before Thanksgiving and the break. I hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you're all going to enjoy your Thanksgiving. Again, cherish this time. Relish any time you can spend time with family and just think about everything you're thankful for. We have a monster show because it's the last show of the week to bring you today. We obviously have to talk about Tennessee's college football playoff ranking and what that means for the Vols going forward. But we're also going to ask a question about, yes, I'm going to say it, the Alabama Love Fest. There was some controversy in the college football playoff because Alabama, after losing its third game in pretty significant fashion, didn't fall the way many people may have thought they should have fallen. And we're going to break that down. We're going to see if there's any credibility to that argument or if Alabama deserves to be where they are. Beyond the college football playoff ranking, though, we're going to talk about the Tennessee-Vanderbilt game on Saturday. Is this the most significant Tennessee-Vanderbilt game of the modern era? There's a very legitimate argument that it is because, honestly, historically, this game hasn't seemed to mean much. So we're going to have to bring that up. So beyond Tennessee-Vanderbilt and the importance of that game, Dylan Sampson gets snubbed from the Doak Walker Award in a vote, and I wrote a column about this yesterday that proves just how lazy these committee members are when they pick their finalist. They got exposed. It was an embarrassing look, and I'm going to break it down exactly how bad it looked. Going to talk a little bit of Lady Vols. Kim Caldwell and the Lady Vols break 100 points for the third time this year in 5 games, but funny enough, they do it with defense. How do you break 100 points with defense? Well, we're going to break that down as we talk some Lady Vol hoops as well. And because it's the last day of our show before the weekend, the games start, we are going to give you the rooting interest for Tennessee and our picks and bets. So we got a lot to get into. Excuse me. Let's dive in. Thank you guys all for tuning in with me today. We are going to start off with the college football playoff ranking, and it's brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations, your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat with 2tsmortgage.com. Chat with 2tsmortgage.com. Tennessee football is number 8 in the college football playoff ranking. That came out yesterday. And here's the question for you. And I'll just ask you guys the first question. I'm typing up the poll question right now. Vols number 8 CFP ranking is too high, too low, or just right. And you guys feel free to comment on the message board now as we get going. And that'll be today's tough question. Is Tennessee's number 8 college football playoff ranking too high, too low, or just right? Today's tough question brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. cityheatandair.com. Tennessee is the second highest ranked 2-loss team in the college football playoff, just behind Georgia. So let me just break these down real quick. Number 1 is Oregon. Number 2 is Ohio State. Number 3 is Texas. Number 4 is Penn State. Number 5 is Notre Dame. Number 6 is Miami. Number 7 is Georgia. Number 8 is Tennessee. Number 9 is SMU. Number 10 is Indiana. Number 11 is Boise State. And number 12 is Clemson. And all the way down at 16 is Arizona State, who would get in as an auto bid as the 5th highest ranked conference champion. Of course, because of the automatic ties to conference champions getting the top 4 seeds, Tennessee wouldn't be affected by Arizona State, but they are affected by Boise State being below them because Boise State would get a top 4 seed, meaning Tennessee would be the number 9 seed if the college football playoff rankings ended today, and they would visit the number 8 seed Georgia Bulldogs. That's not something Tennessee fans want to do. Let's just be honest, guys. That is something Tennessee fans want to avoid at all costs. I don't think Georgia is Georgia could be a good matchup for Tennessee. That's not a game they want to deal with. It's not like they couldn't win. They did jump out to a 10-0 lead over Georgia at Georgia earlier this year, but a playoff game in Athens, that's certainly not something they want to deal with. So if this holds, Tennessee's not going to get what it wants. But here's the good news. Tennessee's 1 spot away from the number 8 seed, which would mean a home playoff game. Now, I talked yesterday about whether or not Tennessee wants a home playoff game or not, because that would typically probably mean the 8th seed, and that's still possible. But I will also add this. It's really hard to see who they would face in the second round based on the difficulties. And yeah, you don't want to face Oregon in the second round, but if you get a 10 or 7, you can face a Georgia in the second round if they bump up and beat Texas in the SEC title. So there's so many factors in play when you talk about that truth be told, because there's so many moving parts this year in the college football playoff, Tennessee's goal should just be to try to get a home playoff game and get a good draw. They're very close to that happening, guys. Again, Georgia's already punched their ticket to the SEC title game. Texas, who is number 3, if they win this weekend, they go to the SEC title game. One of those teams is going to lose that week. Now, Georgia's already beaten Texas, and if Georgia beats Texas again, you could maybe theoretically think that Texas would fall below Tennessee. If Georgia loses, they might fall below Tennessee. And the reason now the caveat to that, I will say, is that the college football playoff has made it clear they won't count conference title games against teams. But does that mean they won't count it against them in terms of putting them into the playoff, or that they won't count against them in terms of just seeding in general? We don't know. But it's not just Georgia, Texas to think about. Oregon and Ohio State are likely going to play for the Big Ten title, unless Ohio State loses to Michigan, at which point Oregon and Penn State will play for the Big Ten title. On top of that, Notre Dame has to visit USC this week in a very losable game. Miami's going to play SMU right now in the ACC title, assuming chalk holds. And this is all assuming chalk holds. So assuming chalk holds, there are 6 teams in the top 9 that are going to have to play each other in conference title games. Oregon, Ohio State, Texas and Georgia, and Miami and SMU. So there's a lot in play here. Beyond just chalk holding, there's a lot of upsets possible, guys. Let's just talk about the least likely first. I mean, look, okay, Michigan's probably not going to beat Ohio State. Maryland is certainly not going to beat Penn State. And I doubt Georgia Tech beats Georgia. But Texas A&M could beat Texas very well. They could. And if they do, Texas will drop below Tennessee. They don't have the schedule strength to back themselves up. And USC could definitely beat Notre Dame, at which point Tennessee would leapfrog them. So when you think about those, there's definitely a good chance that Tennessee gets to the 8th seed. There's a likelihood one of those things happen, assuming Tennessee beats Vanderbilt, which also is one of the games that could be an upset. But assuming Tennessee wins, the likelihood is greater than not that they get a home playoff game at this point, because it's more likely than not that somebody gets an upset, because all of these teams, I would say, are playing in like a 60% chance of winning, and one of them could fall. So if Tennessee does get the 8th seed, what happens? Well, SMU right now is the 9th seed. Tennessee could theoretically get a home playoff game against SMU. That is the best possible draw you could ask for if you're Tennessee, to get a home playoff game against a team that we all know is not good enough really to play in this event. To do that would be huge. And guys, Tennessee could very well have that happen. Now, again, caveat, Miami and SMU could play for the ACC title. We don't know how that's all going to work out. So if that happens, one of them could fall below. The scary part for Tennessee is that Miami could fall to the 9th seed and Tennessee hosts Miami. I think Miami is better than SMU. Tennessee probably doesn't want to deal with Cam Ward. On the other hand, then there's Indiana, who is sitting at 10-1. Miami could leapfrog Indiana, at which point Tennessee would get a home game against Indiana. So I think the most likely scenario in this moment, gun to my head, guys, the 2 most plausible scenarios are Tennessee host Miami. I'm sorry, not Miami. Tennessee host SMU, or Tennessee host Indiana. And that would be a huge, huge, huge boost to the Vols. They would probably likely get to the second round at that point. And here's something even more fun. Oregon's the top seed. There's one interesting fun thing about Tennessee. They've never won a Rose Bowl game in history. Oregon, as the Big Ten champ in the first round, would as the top seed, would play in the Rose Bowl. Tennessee could go play Oregon in the Rose Bowl, and it would be their first chance to ever win the Rose Bowl. Just a little bit of college football tradition there for you guys. But there's still a lot to play for, a lot of factors in play. As we continue to dive in, I want to point out that the show represented by Banks & Jones.
Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? Banks & Jones, T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com.
All right, welcome back. So our poll question that we have up right now, what do you make of Tennessee's number 8 CFP ranking? 9% say too high, 25% say too low, but 66% say just right. Kind of a lean with you guys. Just right. So Zach asked, how can Tennessee host? A couple other questions on this. So Zach, Tennessee can host because, yeah, teams, as Stephen Berryman points out, 5 to 8 would host the first round games. Tennessee's number 8 right now, but they would be the number 9 seed because one of the auto bids is below them in the actual rankings. So that's kind of how that would work out. I think I'm going to reset the poll question real quick. What's most likely for Tennessee? What is Tennessee's most likely first round CFP game? I'm going to say visiting Georgia, hosting SMU, hosting Indiana, or another outcome. You guys let me know on this, and bear with me since I'm the only one I'm doing the poll questions and I'm hosting the show today. So that's why there's a little bit of a pause when those things happen. But let's talk about that. What is the most likely, and what would you most want? If I'm Tennessee, I probably would prefer to host SMU, but I could be convinced to host Indiana. Indiana looked horrible against Ohio State. You obviously don't want to visit Georgia. That's what you don't want. Indiana looked absolutely horrible against Ohio State. They lost 38-15, and that game should have been 55-7. I would make the argument they don't belong in the playoff because they have nothing to fall back on. And truth be told, this isn't an SEC bias for people that point that out. I think Clemson should be in over Indiana. I do. I think Clemson should be in over Indiana at 2 losses. I think Boise State should be higher than Indiana, and I think Arizona State down at 16 should be higher than Indiana, honestly. All these teams have way better resumes than Indiana. I mean, I just have to point that out. So Indiana's resume, to be fair, the strength of schedule has bumped up to number 50 just by playing Ohio State, but they haven't beaten anybody good. So it's not just who you play. It's not just playing teams. It's actually beating somebody worthwhile. And Indiana has beaten, I think the season will end with them having beaten one team that makes a bowl game. And now you can point out Tennessee, their best win is a 3-loss Alabama, and Texas's best win is a Vanderbilt, but they've both played a bunch of 6 to 7-ish wins teams that they've beaten. That's more than Indiana has, and that's the big deal. So truth be told, Indiana's schedule is absolutely awful. There's an argument very clearly that they should be left out, and I don't think there's anything wrong with making that case if you ask me. I just think that their strength of schedule is just flat out miserable and abysmal. But speaking of college football playoff resumes, were they high when they put Alabama at number 13? The Alabama Crimson Tide, that's right, guys, are number 13 in the college football playoff after losing 24-3 on the road to Oklahoma. What the H? How could they do that? I don't have the board, so I'm just saying what the H. What the H brought to you by Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. So a lot of people were upset over the weekend when Alabama, as a 3-loss team, came in ranked number 13, the highest ranked 3-loss team in the college football playoff right now. Many people were very upset about it. I understand why. I get it. You think there's some Alabama favoritism on that. Alabama now, to get to the college football playoff, just needs a couple of losses in front of them. They just need a couple of upsets from some of the 2-loss teams, by the way, if Texas loses there. So let's break this down. There are 3 2-loss teams ahead of Alabama: Georgia, Tennessee, and Clemson. Alabama's clearest path to the playoff is for Clemson to lose to South Carolina and Tennessee to lose to Vanderbilt. Now, they could hope for Georgia to lose to Georgia Tech. That is true. But even still, Georgia would go play in the SEC title game, and if they win that, they're getting an auto bid anyway. So Alabama's best hope is for Tennessee to lose and Clemson to lose. South Carolina, though, if they beat Clemson, is down at number 15, while Alabama's number 13, and they might make the case that they belong over Alabama, and they would have a case if Alabama loses to Auburn. But I do think with both teams 8-3, Alabama has the head-to-head advantage. They would get in over South Carolina. So is the outrage about Alabama still being so close to the college football playoff ranking justified. And I know we got a lot of Tennessee fans that follow us. I get the hate of Alabama. I think in many cases they may have gotten some unfair treatment in the past. But guys, the outrage is not justified. I'm sorry. It's not. It's not. Alabama belongs at number 13. And I can point I can actually point to the data to prove that they belong at number 13. So let's just do strength of schedule power rating real quick. If you did that based on the team ranking standards, based on that formula, you could make the case that South Carolina is close at number 7, but Alabama's all the way up at number 2, and they beat South Carolina. So let's keep going. They're number 2. Only ahead of them is Georgia. Okay, that's strength of schedule power rating. Season strength of schedule power rating at this point, which is takes the resume and doesn't take recency bias, still has Alabama at number 2. These are teamrankings.com. You can pull them up, guys. Strength of schedule power rating basic method, which just uses the formula of the winning percentage of your opponents and all that. Alabama's at number 7. The ESPN FPI strength of schedule, which bases it on the FPI of other teams, which is based on how you play and how you win and who you beat and everything like that. Alabama's at number 11. In every one of these situations, guys, Alabama has the highest ranked strength of schedule of any 3-loss team. The only one approaching them is South Carolina. Now, you may say, okay, well, what about the 2-loss teams in other conferences? Well, if you're a Tennessee fan, you're going to be one of the first people screaming that the SEC is uniquely tougher than other conferences. And I wouldn't deny that. And it's not like Alabama is ahead of any 2-loss Big Ten team. They're just ahead of 2-loss Big 12, Group of 5, and ACC teams. So let's break down those teams that they're ahead of that have fewer losses in them. The first one, Arizona State at 9-2. Well, Arizona State's got an automatic bid anyway, so Alabama wouldn't take a bid away from Arizona State. So they can't complain. Both teams will play on the road anyway, so I don't think that's really a big deal. Going past Arizona State, BYU. BYU has the 40th ranked strength of schedule based on the FPI alone. Within the team rankings, they're in the 30 to 40 range, whereas Alabama's in the top 5. I'm sorry, but Alabama does have a significantly better strength of schedule than BYU. Now, you can make the case for that. But again, Alabama does have a better resume. They have a better resume than Ole Miss. They have a better strength of schedule than Ole Miss, who has 3 losses. A better one than South Carolina, and they beat South Carolina. Tulane is a group of 5 program, guys. Are you seriously going to sit up there and tell me that Alabama does not have a better strength of schedule than Tulane? Of course they do. Tulane's FPI strength of schedule is down at 100. Okay? And if you go based on the team rankings and the formula and things like that, Tulane is always in the 60 to 100 range. Significantly worse than Alabama's. Iowa State, another 2-loss team. Again, you could complain about the Big 12 teams not getting enough love here. I can live with that, but Iowa State, again, has a very low strength of schedule based on the team rankings. Looking at that right now, they are number 32. Not bad. Significantly lower than Alabama's, though. So all these teams have 2 losses, and all of them, again, you can't really make a case for them over Alabama. And finally, UNLV, another group of 5 program. Do I need to spell that out for you guys? Of course, UNLV shouldn't be over them. So I'll ask you. I'm going to ask you. Who should be above Alabama? I'll ask the message board. You guys can complain all day about Alabama being number 13. I would like to know who should be above Alabama. Seriously. Somebody name somebody. I'll wait, because you can't name anybody. You can't name anybody based on resume. Alabama's not number 13 because they're Alabama and they're trying to get a 3-loss team in. Alabama's number 13 because they have by far the toughest strength of schedule of any 3-loss team. Look it up. It's really not close, except for South Carolina. But guess what? Alabama beat South Carolina head-to-head. So, again, Alabama is easily the best 3-loss team. Your best case is that one of the 2-loss Big 12 teams or one of the 2-loss group of 5 teams should be ahead of Alabama. Do you really believe that, guys? Do you really believe that? Honestly. And you know what? I want to close out this poll question real quick. What is Tennessee's most likely first-round CFP game? Visiting Georgia, hosting SMU, hosting Indiana, another outcome. 22% say visiting Georgia, 38% say hosting SMU, 28% say hosting Indiana, 12% say another outcome. All right, so now let's come to this one. What do you make of Alabama's number 13 CFP ranking. We'll say too high, clear Bama bias, or no issue, who should be above them. Okay, so there we go. I'll go too high, clear Bama bias, no issue, who should be above them. And it's what do you make of Alabama's number 13 college football playoff ranking? That one's set to go right now. And guys, you can complain to me all day. This isn't about SEC bias. I want to be clear on this. I'm not out here saying that the SEC automatically gets you a 3-loss or 2-loss team or over a 1-loss team. So let's break this down for a minute. It's schedule strength. If Missouri, for instance, or even if Texas had a 3rd loss, if Texas had 3 losses, I would not put them ahead of BYU or Arizona State or Iowa State. Texas has not played a good schedule to this point. It's number 37. It'll go up once they play Texas A&M this week. I'll give them credit on that. And it'll probably be a top 25 range strength of schedule. But at this point, if Texas had 2 losses, I would absolutely put them above. I would put Iowa State, BYU, and Arizona State above them. I would. And honestly, I disagree with Iowa State and BYU being below Tulane. The point I'm trying to make is this. You can't arbitrarily complain about a team like Alabama, no matter how much you hate them being in a certain spot, unless you can make the case for who should be above them. And Alabama has a tougher strength of schedule than Ole Miss, a slightly tougher strength of schedule than South Carolina by every metric, and they beat South Carolina. And then there's 4 2-loss teams behind them. There's only 3 Power 5 2-loss teams behind them, Arizona State, Iowa State, and BYU. And right now, the Big 12 is going to be the 5th-ranked conference champion of that group. So we kind of think the Big 12 is very weak. So it's not about the SEC. It's about the weakness of the Big 12 more than anything. It's not like they put Alabama over Indiana, okay? And I wouldn't have a problem with them if they did. But you can't just go based on record. Because, again, no one's complaining about Georgia and Tennessee being ahead of Indiana and Boise State and SMU. And they should be. Tennessee and Georgia should be ahead of those teams. So I don't think it's right to complain about Alabama. I'm sorry. I don't. There is an Alabama bias here. You guys can't make the strong case. I'm going to dive into this a little further. First, the show is brought to you by Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
All right, I am on the message board now. And I am still trying to wonder from somebody who should be ahead of Alabama. Travis says every 2-loss team in the top 50 should be ahead of Alabama. Travis, why? Honestly, why? Is it just based on record? Are you talking about top 50 strength of schedule? Because if that's the case, should every 1-loss team be ahead of the 2-loss teams? You see where we're going here? Because if you're going to make it about the losses, then Tennessee should not be the number 8 team in the college football playoff. Zach asked, would they let a 2-loss Big Ten team host? Yes. If Ohio State loses this weekend, not only would they let them host, they should host. Ohio State drew the 3 toughest teams in the Big Ten this year based on the college football playoff rankings. I know they played a week out of conference schedule, but they drew Penn State, they drew Indiana, and they drew Oregon, and their only loss is by 1 point to Oregon. So, again, it's not about the conferences. It's about who you play, and you have to make sure you play a tough strength of schedule. Not tough, just a relatively decent one, okay? Fox Roll says Penn State and Ohio State have trash schedules that would not hold up in the SEC. Fox Roll, I think Ohio State does. I think Ohio State has a good schedule. Again, they played the 3 toughest teams in the Big Ten. If Ohio State lost another game, yes, they would host. Matter of fact, I'll just tell you guys this right now. If Ohio State, again, I'm just going to say it. If Ohio State loses to Michigan, I would drop them below Georgia, but I'd keep them ahead of Tennessee. I might keep them ahead of Tennessee. Now, that's a little bit debatable. You can go either way with that. If we're kind of just going straight by strength of schedule, Ohio State's is actually still lower than Tennessee's based on team rankings and the FPI and resumes and things like that. Their schedule strength is not that impressive when you really break it down. But I will say that it's only slightly below Tennessee's, and it's going to actually go up this week because Michigan is a higher ranked strength of schedule game than Vanderbilt. I don't know how both teams are 6-5, but I guess it's opponents and things like that. But Ohio State has quality wins to hang their hat on. Ohio State beat Penn State. Ohio State beat Indiana. Ohio State's only loss is by 1 to Oregon on the road. If they lose to Michigan this weekend, I'm still putting them in. I would still have them ahead of Tennessee, but I would have them below Georgia. So yeah, yes, a 2-loss Big Ten team would absolutely host. You guys are saying, again, you guys, I'm trying to ask you this question. This is not about Alabama being number 13. You guys are saying that you guys just want to blindly say that's representative of Alabama bias and talk about how they lost, wasn't even competitive against Oklahoma, Lance. I get your point. My question, again, is who should be ahead of them? And I want to go down the list again because I want to go who's directly behind them. Ole Miss is behind them. South Carolina is behind them. By every objective measure, Alabama has a tougher strength schedule than both of those teams. Now, South Carolina's will improve when they play Clemson this week and maybe above Alabama's. But Alabama and South Carolina both have 3 losses, and Alabama beat South Carolina. Ole Miss has 3 losses too, by the way. After that, you have 4 2-loss teams. Arizona State, Tulane, Iowa State, BYU. Are you honestly going to tell me that a 3-loss SEC team is not as good as a 2-loss Big 12 team or 2-loss Group of 5 team? Because if you believe that, then you shouldn't think that a 2-loss SEC team is better than a 1-loss Big 10 team or ACC team, at which point you should think that SMU and Indiana belong above Tennessee. So you got to just stay consistent on this now, okay? If you're consistent with your thoughts, then Alabama is absolutely where they belong to be. Now, the polls disagree with me. Our poll question disagrees with me because I said, what do you make of Alabama's number 13 CFP ranking? Too high. Clear Bama bias is 56%. No issue. Who should be above them is 44%. Sorry, guys. Alabama is where they need to be. Portions of the program are brought to you by Hound Dogs of Knoxville. Champions look good in orange. hdknoxville.com. hdknoxville.com. Give us 2 minutes, and we're going to talk about what Tennessee needs to do relative to their college football playoff situation. And what they need to do is pretty darn simple. Beat Vanderbilt. Harder than it usually is, though. Stick with us 2 minutes. We're going to talk about the Tennessee-Vanderbilt game in just 2 minutes.
I've been in business actually 19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Dave Hooker here for Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
Welcome back to the program, the show brought to you by National Fitness Center. Unmatched value, limitless options. Begin your fitness journey today. Also brought to you by Peak IV Hydration. We got the link to peakivhydration.com in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live your life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. peakivhydration.com. Link is in the chat down below. All right, let's get going with Tennessee Vanderbilt. And the poll question is up. Is this the biggest Tennessee Vanderbilt game of the modern era of college football? Let me give you guys a little bit of a history lesson real quick. Tennessee has won 13 SEC championships. They have 16 conference championships overall. Excuse me. They have 17 conference championships overall because they won 2 SIAA titles in 1914 and 1916, and they won 2 Southern Conference titles under General Neyland in 1927 and 1932. They claim 6 national titles, 1938, 1940, 1950, 1951, 1967, and obviously 1998. They were consensus national champions in 1951 and 1998. The only year they were consensus national champions and won their bowl game was 1998. But they did go undefeated in 1938. They also have 4 undefeated seasons, 1896, 1914, 1938, and 1998 are the 4 perfect seasons in Tennessee football history. They did not play Vanderbilt in one of those years, which is 1896. That was coming off what's called the lost years of Tennessee. Tennessee began football play in 1891. But after 1893, I believe, is it 1893 or 1892? It was after 1893. After going 0-1 their first year, 2-5 the next year, and 2-5 the next year, they decided to give up varsity football, and they just played intramural football in 1895 and 1896 under W.B. Stokely. Those are called the lost years of Tennessee football. Throughout all those times, everything I named, and every time Tennessee's played with championships on the line, of the modern era, Vanderbilt's never been a threat. Tennessee of the modern era, and I call the modern era, I say when Tennessee integrated. I've always considered the modern era of college football post-integration. During that time, every time Tennessee has played Vanderbilt, if they were in a championship race, obviously a championship was on the line, but Vanderbilt was not a threat to them at that time. Vanderbilt didn't have a winning record any of those times a championship was on the line when Tennessee was playing Vanderbilt. Not once. Now, to go through some history real quick, pre-modern era, 1914, that was Tennessee's first win over Vanderbilt. Under Zora Clevenger, they went 9-0 that year, won the SIAA. You could argue that was a bigger game because just beating Vanderbilt was big because Tennessee had never beaten them to that point. 1916, Vanderbilt had a winning record. Tennessee went to Vanderbilt. They beat them 10-6. That helped them capture another SIAA title. That game might have been bigger. 1926, Tennessee played an undefeated Vanderbilt. Robert Neyland's first year, he was hired to even the score with Vanderbilt, and they lost. And that was for the Southern Conference title. So that was a bigger game. 1927, they played Vanderbilt when Vanderbilt had a winning record. They won the Southern Conference, but this was for a chance at a perfect season and maybe to go to the Rose Bowl, and they tied. 1932, again, won the Southern Conference, but tied Vanderbilt when Vanderbilt had a winning record. 1938, capping off their first undefeated regular season, they played Vanderbilt on the road for the chance to win their first ever SEC championship. And Vanderbilt had a winning record. That game was probably bigger than this one. 1946, same thing. General Neyland had returned from war. They played at Vanderbilt with a chance to win the SEC championship, and they won. 1950, they played at Vanderbilt. The SEC title technically wasn't on the line because Kentucky had already clinched it, but because they could win a share of the national title based on certain rankings, that was still on the line. Pretty big. 1951, the SEC and national titles were still on the line. Vanderbilt had a winning record. Tennessee won. In all those games I just mentioned, Tennessee had a winning record and a championship of some sort was on the line. Nothing of that nature has been the case since 1951. Saturday is going to be the first time since then that Tennessee is facing a Vanderbilt team with a winning record, with a big event, championship related on the line. That big event is obviously an appearance in the college football playoff. I think with that in mind, bank on it. Vanderbilt this weekend, this is the biggest Vanderbilt game for Tennessee of the modern era. Bank on it.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
All right, so our poll question is up. Is this the biggest Tennessee Vanderbilt game of the modern era? 89% say yes, 11% say no. So you guys agree with me. I got some more data for you on this. StubHub, I'm pulling it up right now for Tennessee Vanderbilt, for the Tennessee Vanderbilt game. And this is data that kind of proves my point, guys. Actually, I'm going to pull up SeatGeek first, okay? So let's go to SeatGeek. Tickets are starting, guys. Tickets are starting for a Vanderbilt game at $284. Vol fans have spiked the prices of Vanderbilt tickets. You didn't get tickets for that in the past. Going to StubHub real quick. I'm just going to keep pulling these up. Tickets are starting. And again, tickets are starting at $220. That's not Vanderbilt fans spiking those tickets, guys. That's Tennessee fans. Tennessee fans are trying to pack Nashville for a chance to go to the college football playoff. It's going to be lit in Nashville, and I do think it's going to be mostly Tennessee fans there. This is huge, guys. Tennessee's never been this excited to play Vanderbilt in a long time. It's an in-state rivalry that Tennessee consistently beats, and now they're playing a good Vanderbilt team. They're playing them in Nashville, which is Vol country, for a chance at a playoff. This is a huge game. And also, it's always big for Vanderbilt. They just want to beat Tennessee, and they have a winning record, and they have a chance to finish 7-5. Rusty Shackelford says Ticketmaster starts at $320. I believe you. Prices have spiked for the Tennessee Vanderbilt game, guys. They are way out of whack because so many Tennessee fans want to go to this game. That does not happen. I can't stress you enough how much that doesn't happen. It's usually a home game for Tennessee. It is. But they have to, like, it's effectively a home game. But this year, Vanderbilt's more excited. So here's why the tickets are being driven up. I'll tell you exactly why. Typically, Vanderbilt fans are apathetic. So when Tennessee goes to Vanderbilt, their fans scoop up all the tickets and they go to the game. The ones that feel like going. This year, Vanderbilt's actually excited about being 6-5 and having a winning record. So they have more to play for. So they're more thrilled and excited to host Tennessee after they already beat Alabama and Nashville. So they are trying to scoop up those tickets. Tennessee fans want to scoop them up, and it's even more urgent for Tennessee fans to want to scoop them up because they want to see Tennessee try to win to go to the college football playoff, and they want to give their fans and their team a home field advantage. This is huge, guys. It is rare for Tennessee Vanderbilt to be like this. There's a couple of times, I'll say, when Tennessee Vanderbilt of recent years had some sort of magnitude like this. 2013, Butch Jones's first year, Vanderbilt was a ranked team going to Knoxville. Tennessee, I believe at the time, was 4-6. They still had a chance to go to a bowl game. They needed to beat Vanderbilt. They failed to do it. That was when Josh Dobbs was starting as a true freshman and clearly was not ready to play. He got ready next year, but he wasn't ready in that moment. So that's the first one. So that was 2013. 2016, Tennessee went to Vanderbilt, visited Vanderbilt, and it was for a chance to go to a New Year's Six Bowl at the time, which would have been a rare accomplishment for Tennessee because of the decade of dysfunction and everything that had happened since firing Philip Fulmer. That was Butch Jones's year in which the Vols were expected to win the East. They started 5-0 because of beating Florida and the Hail Mary against Georgia. They slumped to 8-4. They were 8-3 facing Vanderbilt at the end of the year. They had found out they wouldn't win the East. Butch Jones gave his dreaded champions of life comment that made everybody sick to their stomach. And then the dreaded champions of life comment, and it all looked horrible, but at least they had a chance to play for a New Year's Six Bowl, and then they choked at Vanderbilt on the road because the defense was absolutely abysmal. So, truth be told, yes, this is the biggest Tennessee Vanderbilt game of the modern era. It's a very exciting situation for Tennessee. You should love it if you're a fan. I think the good news is that should help Tennessee take this game seriously. They know what they're up against. They know what they're dealing with. Will they? Who knows? Last week, Ole Miss should have taken Florida seriously. Alabama should have taken Oklahoma seriously. And, Indiana and Ohio State is something. Indiana didn't take Ohio State seriously. Let's just be honest. But overall, and Texas A&M should have taken Auburn seriously. I'm not so sure Ole Miss didn't take Florida seriously, though. And I'm not so sure Alabama didn't take Oklahoma seriously. I think it's very possible that they just struggled in those games because playing on the road in the SEC is much more difficult this year. That's probably a big reason that Tennessee fans want to make sure they fill the stadium. They don't want Alabama or Vanderbilt to have a home field advantage to cost them a playoff spot. So Austin, Ireland also brings up a great point. Vanderbilt also has about 15,000 less seats than usual because of the construction they're going. So that's true. Fewer seats at Vanderbilt Stadium, more Vanderbilt fans wanting to go to the game, more Tennessee fans wanting to go to the game when Vol fans always try to go to the game. That is spiking the ticket prices right now. This is the biggest Tennessee Vanderbilt game of the modern era. Zach, you keep trying to call us out on this. You keep trying to say, are we aware that being ranked number 8 does not equal being a host? Yes, we know that. We've been talking about things that could happen in the college football playoff race that could move Tennessee up to number 7, which would give them a home game at number 8. So, and there's a lot of things that it's more likely one of these upsets happens. Texas losing to Texas A&M, Notre Dame losing to USC, something quirky happening in conference championship week. It's more likely one of those things happens than not. Now, again, is it still likely Tennessee gets a home game? No, because is it likely one of those things happens and Tennessee beats Vanderbilt? Maybe not. We don't know. But again, if one team ahead of Tennessee loses, then Tennessee could get, actually not just one, excuse me, no, I'm sorry. If Notre Dame or Texas loses, or Georgia for that matter, not happening, but if they do, Tennessee's getting a home playoff game. And if Penn State loses, Tennessee's also probably getting a home playoff game. So if any of those 4 teams lose, they're probably getting a home playoff game. Yes, Tennessee needs help, but it's not crazy to think about. Portions of the program brought to you by Quality Tire Pros, serving Chattanooga community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service, automotive, brake alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Walk in and say, hey, Bo, say Off the Hook Sports sent you. QualityTirePros.com. This day in Tennessee football history, 20 years ago today, Tennessee was down to their 3rd string quarterback after losing Brent Schaefer and Eric Ainge to injuries. And they trailed a Kentucky Wildcats team that was really bad, 31-22. They'd already won the East. They were 8-2 because of a loss to Auburn, who finished undefeated, and a fluke loss to Notre Dame. But they were struggling to beat Kentucky, which would not have made them look like a legitimate East contender. They were the Cinderella of that year, having upset Georgia and beaten Florida to win the East, and beaten Alabama just for good measure, even though Alabama wasn't good. They trailed Kentucky 31-22. Rick Clausen had thrown a pick 6. There had been a missed field goal by James Woolhoit. James Woolhoit had missed an extra point, and Tennessee had missed on a 2-point conversion after that missed field goal. So they trailed by 2 scores. Tennessee came back in the 4th quarter, scored 2 touchdowns to win, 37-31 to win the East and finish 9-2. They would finish 10-3 that year as the Cinderella team of college football and the youngest team in the SEC. This day in Tennessee football history is brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
For Dynasty Pools and Spas, your home for the best spas and everything you need to jump right in. Relaxing, therapeutic, absolutely. But what sets Dynasty Pools and Spas apart from others is that you get everything with any spa purchase. You get the cover lift, the steps, delivery, and chemicals. When Dynasty Pools and Spas delivers your spa from their Athens location within 125 miles, you'll get your own personal hydrotherapy spa. Mention me, Dave Hooker, or Off the Hook Sports, and get $500 off your top quality new spa. Dynasty Pools and Spas, just off the Athens exit. Drop in and receive a free gift from Off the Hook Sports, Dynasty Pools and Spas. Mention Off the Hook Sports for a drop-in prize and that $500 discount, Dynasty Pools and Spas. To check out some of the Dynasty Spa models and to buy spa chemicals, go to dynastypoolsandspas.com. Dynasty Pools and Spas.
All right, welcome back. The show is brought to you by Ray Varner Ford. Local you trust, innovation you can afford. Now, it's time to be an angry Tennessee fan. And the reason I say that is because awards finalists came out yesterday. Tim Banks is up for the Boreals Award. Congratulations to him. Well deserved. But Tennessee's Dylan Sampson was left off of the Doak Walker Award finalist list. Despite the fact that Dylan Sampson just set 3 weeks ago set the all-time single-season rushing touchdown record in Tennessee. Last week, set the all-time scoring record at Tennessee. Leads the SEC with 22 rushing touchdowns and could break Derrick Henry's SEC all-time record for scoring before it's all said and done. Leads the SEC in rushing and is on track to set Tennessee's all-time single-season rushing record, breaking Travis Stevens. If he goes for 100 yards and then in just 2 more games, he will have it, and he will have done it in as many games as Travis Stevens did at 13. Somehow, that wasn't enough for him to be on the Heisman list. I'm sorry, not Heisman, Doak Walker list. The players on it, Boise State's Ashton Jeanty. No issue there. Ashton Jeanty has over 2,000 yards rushing, 27 touchdowns, clear of the field in both categories, and averaging 7.5 yards a carry. I get he has easier competition, but you can't ignore that. Caleb Johnson plays Big Ten ball. I'll give him credit. Over 6.5 yards a carry, 21 touchdowns, 1,492 yards total. Fair enough. Amari Hampton of the North Carolina Tar Heels is number 3, averaging just over 5.5 yards a carry with just 14 touchdowns and 1,475 yards rushing. Amari and Hampton does not belong on this list. And this is my poll question for you guys, and I want to get into it because it's going to expose something. Why was Dylan Sampson snubbed of being a Doak Walker finalist? They hate Tennessee, or the committee is lazy? That's the question. I'm going to be honest with you guys. Maybe they do hate Tennessee, but truth be told, the committee's lazy. They just took the 3 leading rushers in college football this year and made them their finalist. That's pathetic. It's not how you do football, guys. You look at rushing efficiency, scoring, support from your passing game, level of competition, quality of offensive line. You take all that into account when you are doing these finalists. And they didn't do any of that. They just took the 3 top rushers. Because if they were serious, RJ Harvey at UCF is more impressive. Let's stop with Dylan Sampson for a moment. RJ Harvey at UCF has 1,458 yards. That's 17 fewer yards than Hampton, but he's averaging 7 yards a carry, 6.9 to be exact, nearly a yard and a half more than Hampton, and he has 7 more touchdowns at 21. Trey Stewart at Jacksonville State, 1,318, averaging 6.1 yards a carry, 19 touchdowns. You can have Hampton ahead of him because of the level of competition. Taj Brooks at Texas Tech, you can also have Hampton ahead of him. He has fewer rushing yards, and he's only averaging 5 yards per carry, so fewer yards per carry, and has as many touchdowns. Fair enough. Dylan Sampson is 7th in rushing, and he has 1,307 yards, and he's averaging just as many yards per carry as Hampton, despite having 168 yards fewer. But he has 8 more touchdowns, 22 touchdowns on the year. When someone is this clear of the SEC or the Big Ten in rushing, it's absolutely ridiculous to not put them on the Doak Walker Award finalist list. And Dylan Sampson joins a long tradition of Tennesseans getting screwed out of awards. We're going to talk more about this in a second. First, the show brought to you by Neubert Collision Center.
5th year, the 2nd and 3rd generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that. If we wouldn't put our family in it, we're not going to put their family in it. If you're going to say that you're doing the best work in Knoxville, now saying it's one thing, producing it and providing it's another.
The largest family-owned collision center in Knoxville is Joe Neubert Collision Center.
All right, so let's do the history of the Doak Walker real quick, because this isn't the first time laziness from voters cost them. For those of you who don't remember, this was 23 years ago. Travis Stevens led the SEC in rushing. He was a finalist for the Doak Walker Award, and he lost it out to Luke Staley at BYU, with voters not paying attention at all to the level of competition that was faced. Now, Philip Fulmer having Travis Stevens fly out to New York for the Doak Walker Award finalist list was a big mistake. For those who don't know, John Henderson and Travis Stevens flew up to New York the Thursday for the awards presentation ceremony, and they had the SEC title game on Saturday. And it was an SEC title game to play for to go to the national title. And Tennessee lost to LSU that day. It's one of the worst losses in Tennessee history, probably the worst loss. 2003, Dustin Colquitt was robbed of the Ray Guy Award. We don't even need to get that. That's to the best punter, by the way. When he single-handedly won 2 games for Tennessee that year, Miami and South Carolina. We don't even need to get to the Heisman snubs. Heath Sherler being second to Charlie Ward, no one was going to debate that. Peyton Manning, we've talked about enough. Like, not winning over Charles Woodson was egregious. Hendon Hooker not going to New York at all was egregious. Johnny Majors in 1956 losing to Paul Hornung was egregious. Now, Jim Brown probably should have won that Heisman anyway, and Majors did finish ahead of Jim Brown. But Majors still should have at least finished ahead of Paul Hornung, and so should have Jim Brown. Hank Larcella in 1951 should have won the Heisman, and then Gene McKeever in 1929 would have won the Heisman had there been the award back then. But you're going to retroactively award Gene McKeever the Heisman for 1929, but Dylan Sampson breaks all of Gene McKeever's records at Tennessee this year, and he's not even a finalist for the best player at his position? That's insane. I'm sorry. That's absolutely ridiculous. Mike C said Sampson had fumble problems. I wouldn't trade him, though. Only one of those fumbles is his fault. 2 of those were helmets on the ball. One of them, he was held up and then a helmet was put on a ball. So I'm giving him a break on that. So yes, this is award snubbing for Tennessee in just the worst, grossest way. And again, Dylan Sampson's not the only one who should be mad. RJ Harvey has 17 fewer yards and is averaging 1.2 more yards per carry and has 7 more touchdowns than Amarian Hampton. He's at UCF. Unless you really think the Big 12 is that much of a step below the ACC, I don't know how you could possibly justify Harvey being behind Hampton. Again, Trey Stewart and Taj Brooks deserve to be below them. Dylan Sampson, though, should be in over all of them. He just should. He should get the 3rd spot. Someone that clear of the toughest conference in the nation, or at least one of the top 2 toughest conferences in the nation. Someone that clear of everybody running the ball should get there. And Tennessee this year has not been what they expected to be passing the ball. So Josh Heupel has had to rely more on Dylan Sampson, and he has been a second half machine. So it's absolutely ridiculous that Dylan Sampson is not up for the Doak Walker Award. That's embarrassing. And I think this really exposes the committee as lazy. So the poll question, why was Dylan Sampson snubbed of being a Doak Walker finalist? They hate Tennessee. The committee is lazy. Guys, it's 50-50. It's 50-50. We got 37 votes coming in. It's 50-50. And I mean, it's tough. I would say the committee's just lazy. And my evidence of the committee's just lazy is Dylan Sampson's not the only victim of this. Again, RJ Harvey can claim to be a victim of this. DJ Giddens of Kansas State could claim to be a victim of this. Maybe. That one's a little bit trickier. The most clear-cut one, though, is RJ Harvey. The big debate comes down to Harvey or Dylan Sampson. Harvey does have better numbers than Sampson all the way around. Comparable touchdowns, averaging 1.2 more yards per carry, and has 151 yards more. But Dylan Sampson's playing in the SEC. So it's kind of a wash. It is kind of a wash, but I maintain that in general, it's kind of egregious to sit there and say that Dylan Sampson should not be a Doak Walker Award finalist. Chalk him up to the list of Tennessee players robbed by awards. Now, Tennessee has won awards in the past. Steve DeLong won the Outland Trophy in the 60s. John Henderson won the Outland Trophy in 2000. Right in 2000. Eric Berry won the Thorpe Award in 2010. By the way, when I talk about award snubs, he won it in 2009. Eric Berry was snubbed of the Thorpe Award in 2008. He should have won it both years. Probably should have won it in 2008 over 2009, if we're being honest. He was more of a linebacker in 2009 under Monty Kiffin. And of course, Jalen Hyatt did win the Biletnikoff Award in 2022. Nobody could ignore Jalen Hyatt, though. I mean, that was just crazy. So, yes, Tennessee has had some very surprising award snubs. I'm not saying Dylan Sampson should have won the Heisman. You can make the case for Ashton Jeanty, despite Jeanty's easy level of competition. You can make, I mean, his numbers are just outlandish, so I'm fine with that. But I don't see how in the world you could say that that Dylan Sampson does not deserve to be a Heisman finalist. Portions of the program are brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com. 2 minutes. When we come back, we're going to go to the hardwood for a minute. Talk a little hoops because, guys, this Lady Vols team is pretty darn good, I'd say so myself. 2 minutes. Stick with us. We'll talk about that in a second.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at NFC1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
When the lights turn on and the game begins, you need a team that gets the job done. It's Ford commercial truck season at Ray Varner Ford in Clinton, where our strong lineup is built for power and performance. Step up your game in this new 24 F-150 4x4 Super Crew, $46,997. At 250 cargo van, $50,950. 24 Ford Maverick XLT Hybrid, $28,929.
Local you trust, performance you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
Sorry, rookie mistake. Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. Again, I am Caleb Calhoun. Did y'all watch the Tennessee Lady Vols last night? Tennessee moved to 5-0 as Kim Caldwell's team beat the Western Carolina Catamounts 102-50. That's the third time of their 5-game schedule that they scored over 100 points. In their last outing, they beat the Liberty Flames 109-93. Kim Caldwell came out and called out their defense, and they responded. They went off. Talasia Cooper was the star of the game. Talasia Cooper is 4 of 6, went 4 of 6 from 3. But and she had 20 points en route to that. Off the bench, Avery Strickland also went 2 of 2 from 3 and had 8 points. But the crazy part is Tennessee as a team only went 10 of 41 from 3, 24.4%. And they scored 102 points. How'd they do it? They forced 37 turnovers. Western Carolina went 2 of 12 from 3 because of Tennessee's elite perimeter defense, and Tennessee forced 37 turnovers. They had 17 steals. The story of all of this was Z Spearman, who had 11 points and 4 steals. She was 0-2 from 3, but it didn't matter. She could score so much in transition because she had 4 steals. Sarah Puckett was not good from 3, 0 of 5, and she's a typical shooter, but she still had 6 points thanks to her 3 steals. Ruby Whitehorn had 16 points because while she only had 1 steal, she and Samara Spencer, who had 11 points, were continually in position to make plays off turnovers forced by the Lady Vols. And then off the bench, Tess Darby, although she only went 2 of 9 from 3, she did have 12 points, and she had 2 steals. She benefited from transition. This team, guys, scored 102 points because of how aggressive they were on defense. This is the most fun team to watch in a long time for the Tennessee Lady Vols. Let's take wins out of it for a minute. Let's take wins out of it. I'm going to ask this poll question, and maybe it's blasphemous, but is this year's Lady Vols team the most fun to watch in history? And you guys can say, yes, I love this tempo. No, I prefer the champion. I prefer the national champions. All right. So maybe that's not going to be phrased right because people are going to say they prefer some other teams. But here's the truth of the matter with the Tennessee Lady Vols during the Pat Summitt years. And I don't blame Pat Summitt. I'd have done the same thing if I was Pat Summitt. This is what you do when you get those players. You play a more slow post basketball game, and you use your size and your elite players and elite stars to their advantage, exactly what South Carolina is doing now. Pat Summitt did that with defense and rebounding, so it won a lot. So yeah, that was fun to watch because they were winning a lot. But this team, if you don't have it at that level, you have to figure out a way to be different. And this team is being different. Kim Caldwell is focusing solely on pace, solely on tempo, solely on being aggressive, and she's creating controlled chaos. Now, she took a risk in the offseason. So here's how Kim Caldwell's system works. And I've talked to you guys about this before, but I'm going to say it again. Kim Caldwell at the smaller levels played a frenetic pace and did so with elite shooters. So she would have the best three-point shooting team in her conferences because they would always be wide open because of the pace they were playing at. The hard part is she didn't have the size to compete at the higher levels. So when she got to Tennessee, she had to get the exact same pace, but also do it with players of size. This year in the transfer portal, this all season, she added a bunch of new players. She went for the size and the athleticism over the three-point shooting. I said that was a risk. I think it's turned out to be a smart move, and here's why. With the athleticism, you're still going to get those open looks because of the pace, and they're getting those open looks. And with the more open looks, the three-point shooting from players who weren't that efficient last year will get more efficient this year. It's not going to be great, but it'll be fine. The size, meanwhile, is what they need to stay competitive in these SEC games and hope they steal a few against elite teams, which I think they can do. Now, people are very upset that Tennessee is not yet in the top 25, but truth be told, they haven't played anybody yet. And I'm not so sure how caliber of a top 25 team they are this year, but they're recruiting very well, guys. They have 3 elite commitments for next year already. Kim Caldwell is getting the players she wants to run her system that do what she needs, because she needs size, athleticism, and shooting to win. I mean, I know that's like, okay, everybody wants size, athleticism, and shooting, but shooting is a big part of it. She needs them to be more reliable than the shooters she has. But for the time being, enjoy what you're watching, because what I will say is this is an underrated part. Going with the tempo the way she's going is going to make this team so exciting. It's going to put more fans in the seats, and it's going to give the Lady Vols a little bit more NIL money to work with on the recruiting trail. And that's what it's all about, because Danny White struck a bargain with Kim Caldwell. He got an up-and-comer who he didn't have to shell out a lot of money for. And at the same time, he's got a coach who's going to generate attention and interest early so she can generate more NIL money to be able to recruit top players. This was a brilliant hire. Kim Caldwell has got this team playing very well. They're one of the most fun teams to watch. They are now 5-0. And now they have a little bit of a break before they get set to face Florida State, which they're going to face on December the 4th. That is a week from today. They're going to face Florida State on December the 4th. That'll be their first real test. Florida State is receiving votes in the polls just as Tennessee is, but they're not in the top 25 yet. But after Florida State, 3 days after that, they play Iowa. Now it's not Caitlin Clark, Iowa, because Caitlin Clark's in the WNBA now, but that team is still ranked number 22. So they still have a fairly decent schedule. Out-of-conference schedule is not what you would want it to be this year. I'm just going to be honest. It's not what you would expect from a Tennessee standard. That's the one knock on Kim Caldwell. I'm not sure if she set this schedule, because you can do it a lot closer in women's college basketball. I will say, though, their conference schedule, they play Oklahoma, they play LSU twice, they play Texas, they play South Carolina, and they play Ole Miss, and they play Alabama and Kentucky. That is 8 games against top 25 teams, and that is, since they play LSU twice, that is 5 games against top 10 teams, as Oklahoma, South Carolina, LSU, and I would believe Texas are all top 10 teams. Not to mention they still have UConn non-conference. So it's not like they don't play anybody. They play UConn in a non-conference game in what could be a very exciting game. This Lady Vols team overall is incredibly exciting to watch. Going to talk a little bit more about them in a second. First, the show brought to you by Ray Varner Ford.
Serve $29,946. Pre-owned 2024 Ford Maverick $39,990. 2023 Ford Expedition Platinum 4x4 $67,970. Pre-owned vehicles you can afford. Ray Varner Ford, built for the game.
All right, our poll question, is this the Lady Vols team? Is this year's Lady Vols team the most fun to watch in history? Yes, I love this tempo, 70%. No, I prefer national champions, 30%. I'm with most of you guys. Yes, I love this tempo. I think the tempo will help bring fans in. Bringing fans in and bringing in excitement will create more NIL money, and it'll create more buzz, and it'll be enough to make a splash this first year. And if the Lady Vols can make a splash and prove they're coming back, it'll make Kim Caldwell a hot commodity because of the success she's already had, and that will lead to them recruiting at a very high level, bringing in top 10, top 12 recruiting classes consistently. Women's basketball is still a recruiting sport, guys. Actually, more than a lot of other sports, believe it or not. Women's basketball is still, it's not back in the old days where if you got one player, you were going to win national champions. But if you get 3, you will. And a lot of teams do get the 3 to 5. I mean, when UConn was dominating with Gina Auriemma, they had a monopoly on recruiting, guys. They got everybody. They don't have that anymore. And you're seeing it. Dawn Staley has more of a monopoly on it than anybody. So, truth be told, this is a great situation for the Lady Vols to be in. Everything's exciting about this program. And I think people should be very thrilled about how things are turning out. I think the Lady Vols are going to be one of the most exciting teams to watch this year. What that turns into, I don't know. I think a reasonable goal is to try to get to the Sweet 16. I think they can do that with this tempo, but if they don't freak out. Okay. Kim Caldwell is doing for the Lady Vols kind of what Bruce Pearl did for Tennessee. The difference is Tennessee was a down in the dumps, apathetic program in men's basketball that nobody cared about. The Lady Vols, relative to other women's basketball programs, are a team that a lot of people care about and a lot of people want to see do well. The thing is, they need a new life injected into them. So that's where the Bruce Pearl part comes, because Kim Caldwell can inject new life. I don't know if Kim Caldwell can be the cheerleader Bruce Pearl was, because she seems a little bit more stoic, a little bit more calm when she focuses on coaching, whereas Bruce Pearl was going to do stuff like paint his chest and all that fun stuff. Kim Caldwell's obviously not going to do that. But at the same time, the actual style of play is going to generate a lot of interest. And I think because of that, this was a great hire. Winning 102-50, scoring over 100 points in 3 of 5 games, and scoring 90 points in 4 of 5 games. And in the 5th game, they only won. They scored 89 points. It's so impressive. But again, they struggled with Liberty. They struggled with MTSU. They only won those games by 16 and 14, respectively. You're going to see some ugly, sloppy games from this team. Let's talk. It's controlled chaos, guys. It's controlled chaos. But because this is a young team, because this is not exactly the type of team Kim Caldwell wants, and it's their first year playing together, it's sometimes going to be sloppy chaos. It's sometimes going to be out of control chaos. So just temper your expectations and expect a fun season, not necessarily a season that is going to generate the type of success you want it to have. That comes later, but recruiting is going to do it for you. I promise. The stat of the day is this, and this is a good one, guys. You're going to love this one. The stat of the day, brought to you by Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, daily updates, facebook.com//sports treasures TN. That's facebook.com/sports treasures TN. The stat of the day is this. Tennessee is officially the first team in SEC history to score 50 or more points in a game 4 times while giving up 10 or fewer all 4 of those times. Now, 3 of them were against Kent State, Chattanooga, and UTEP. An FCS school, the worst team in college football this year in Division I, and maybe one of the 5 worst teams in Division I. That would be UTEP, one of the 5 worst. Kent State, the worst in Division I, and Chattanooga, an FCS school. But NC State's not a terrible team. They could actually go to a bowl game this year. Tennessee beat Chattanooga 69-3. They beat NC State 51-10. They beat Kent State 71-0, and they beat UTEP 56-0. No SEC team has done that in history. And you could caveat it with their strength of schedule, but a bunch of other SEC teams throughout history have played 4 bad out-of-conference teams, and Tennessee actually has played a Power 5 team. This is far from the worst power. This is far from the easiest schedule an SEC team has ever played, guys. Far from it. So to do it 4 times is beyond impressive. That really shows what Tennessee has built and what Josh Heupel has built. And they're doing it in a year where they've had some issues on offense and at quarterback. The show brought to you by TriStar Hats, TriStar Hats Co., TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. product?
TriStar Hats Co. What's that?
You know, those really cool hats, shirts, tumblers, and even license plates with 3 stars like the official Tennessee flag and stripes like the American flag. Pretty patriotic if you ask me.
Ah, gotcha. Seen those. Those are cool. Where can I get them?
Simple. TriStarHatsCo.com. And if you order now, there's 10% on any order $50 or more. Plus, use the promo code HOOKED.
With the promo code HOOKED, you get 10% off. That's hooked.
And don't forget free shipping with any order over $50. Stock up at TriStarHatsCo.com. That's TriStarHatsCo.com. There are plenty of wannabes out there, so make sure you go to TriStarHatsCo.com for the best quality and customer service.
Will do, and I'll be sure to use the promo code HOOKED. That's hooked when I do to save an additional 10% off. TriStarHatsCo.com.
TriStar Hats Co. is a trademark of TriStar Hats Co. LLC. Any use without express written consent is prohibited.
All right, welcome back. It's time to get back to Tennessee football and some college football. Rooting interest for the Vols this week in college football. Now, for Tennessee, the most important thing, win and you're in. Beat Vanderbilt and you're in, and you see what happens there. And yeah, you shouldn't focus on any of these games if you're Tennessee. They had a slow start last week against UTEP, largely because I think many of the fans and players were focused on the other games. So this time, win and you're in. That is the key for Tennessee. And that's how we're going to get to this with rooting interest for the Vols. All right, so we're going to start with we're not going to go tiers this time because some of the lesser tiers that I used to do just don't mean the same. So really it's just every game they should root for this year, this weekend, every game they should root for. And let's get rolling. The first one they should probably root for is, again, this is a probably because we don't know how it's going to end up in the end, but I'm going to say Auburn over Alabama. Now you would say, yeah, but doesn't Alabama need to be a quality win for Tennessee? And I would say not at this point. Tennessee's in. That's not going to hurt Tennessee too much. What you don't want is Alabama getting back into the college football playoff, guys. Alabama can be dangerous, okay? They can be dangerous. And so I think maybe root for Auburn over Alabama, but that's just a maybe. It's not a big deal. Don't take that one seriously. Here's who you should root for outside of that. This is to help Tennessee strength the schedule, okay? I'm going to name the teams to help Tennessee strength the schedule. But they don't really affect where Tennessee stands in the college football playoff rankings. They just give Tennessee a better boost when they try to make their claim that they should be a higher seed or over certain teams that whine. So it's for bragging rights. Root for Mississippi State over Ole Miss, even though that won't matter. It's not like Mississippi State will have a winning team, but just root for them for the heck of it. Root for Kentucky over Louisville. Kentucky will be 5-7 at that point, 1 spot out of the playoff. Now, root heavily for Florida over Florida State, because then Tennessee didn't just beat a bowl-eligible team. They beat a 7-5 team. A 7-win team looks a lot better than a 6-win team. So root like heck for Florida over Florida State. Root for, and by the way, Florida would be 7-5 with the toughest schedule in college football history, maybe. So it could be the equivalent of 9-3. Root for Oklahoma over LSU. Yes, you want to root for Oklahoma over LSU because then Oklahoma finishes 7-5. And again, 7-5 teams look a lot better than 6-6 teams. The same reason you should root for Arkansas over Missouri. All of a sudden, Arkansas is a 7-win team, and Tennessee has no bad losses on the year. If you're Tennessee, you don't want to be the reason a team got to a bowl game instead of finishing 5-7. Tennessee did that twice, funny enough, in 2016, I believe, when they lost to South Carolina and Vanderbilt. Helped both teams go 6-6, helped both coaches extend their careers at those schools. Will Muschamp and Derek Mason. You don't want to be that guy. And then NC State over UNC. That's to get them to 6-6. They should have gotten to 6-6 last week, but blew it against Georgia Tech. But if they can beat UNC to get to 6-6, and UNC did just fire Mac Brown, there could be some emotions there. We don't know how that'll affect anything. If that happens, Tennessee would then be able to claim that they have played, I would believe, if NC State wins over the weekend, Tennessee, having played Vanderbilt, will be able to claim that they have played 7 teams that are bowl eligible this year. And if the other 3 go the way I'm talking about, then they can claim they've played 5 teams that finished with a winning record. That's a really good resume, and that stands out. So those are the big ones. All right. Next one. This involves Tennessee's college football playoff, let's say, positioning, or teams that they just want to avoid playing in the playoff. How about that? These are just teams they want to avoid playing in the playoff in general. Clemson, South Carolina, I'm leaving that one out because I'm not so sure who they want to play in the playoff. I don't think that one's relevant to Tennessee. So let's get to the other ones. You want Boise State to beat Oregon State. Why do you want Boise State to beat Oregon State? Because you want Boise State, Memphis, or Tulane to get into the college football playoff, because you don't want Army or Navy getting in, and Army or Navy still could get in. That's a very bad matchup for anybody that's involved. Everybody in the playoff wants Army and Navy not getting in. I think Navy's out of it at this point. Army just has 1 loss, though. So they could stake a claim that they belong. That would be the scariest thing if you're Tennessee. You wouldn't face them in the first round, but you could face them at some point down the line if they pull off an upset. Now, Army has dropped from the rankings, but they could move up. You don't want them. You'd rather face UNLV, Tulane, Boise State, or probably Memphis is the other group of 5 team getting in. Funny enough, Boise State's going to get a first-round bye at this point, but you want one of those teams. You desperately don't want Army making any noise. All right, so there's that. How about Georgia Tech over Georgia? Just because you want Georgia getting out of the you just want Georgia being knocked out of the college football playoff. I mean, there's truth with that. You just want Georgia being knocked out. So Georgia Tech over Georgia is a big one. You really want that happening for your positioning. And then these are a couple of odd ones, but SMU over Cal and Miami over Syracuse. You want chalk with the ACC. Now, let me explain why. It's clear Tennessee is going to finish ahead of both of them. What you don't want to see happen is one of those teams win, probably Miami, most notably Miami. You don't want to see Miami win and SMU lose, and then Miami play Clemson for the ACC title, and Clemson wins, and then Clemson gets in, and they could be a bigger threat to Tennessee than SMU, and 2 ACC teams get in. You don't want that situation. So you want both of these teams to win just to make sure that there aren't 2 ACC teams getting in, because that could affect Tennessee's seeding. So you want to root for both teams, but most notably you want SMU over Cal. That's who you really want to win. Honestly, if Syracuse beats Miami, that's not a big deal, because if SMU beats Cal and Syracuse beats Miami, well, then SMU plays Clemson for the ACC title, and if Clemson wins, SMU's probably out. But you don't really want Clemson getting in because they're a dangerous team, truth be told. The show brought to you by Double D Piping. I'm about to tell you the games you should be focused on the most to try to hope that you could see Tennessee get the 8th seed and home field advantage. Again, once again, the show brought to you by Double D Piping.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
All righty. Now, here are the biggest games to pay attention to if you are a Tennessee fan this weekend. There's 4. If any of these 4 teams lose, you can benefit. The first that I think is the least likely, but I put them in this tier, maybe I shouldn't have, is Michigan over Ohio State. If Michigan beats Ohio State and then Ohio State potentially loses to Oregon in the Big Ten title game, then Tennessee could leapfrog Ohio State, which would get them the 8th seed in the home playoff spot, and they wouldn't have to play Georgia. Me personally, If Ohio State loses to Michigan, I would still have Ohio State ahead of Tennessee because I think even though technically Tennessee's strength of schedule is tougher, their strength of schedule and then there's quality wins. And the resume of beating Penn State and Indiana and only losing by 1 at Oregon kind of outweighs losing by 14 to Georgia and beating Alabama. It just does. So there's that. But let's talk about the 3 that could help Tennessee the most. Maryland over Penn State. The most impossible game, not going to happen. Maryland's not beating Penn State at Penn State, but if they do, Tennessee will absolutely move ahead of Penn State. Penn State has no quality wins. You could actually see Penn State get knocked out of the college football playoff at that point if Maryland pulls that out. They're not going to pull it out. Maryland's a bad team this year, but if they do beat Penn State, Tennessee moves up to the 8th seed. USC over Notre Dame. Again, USC beats Notre Dame. Tennessee moves up to the 8th seed. That would be a huge boost for Tennessee if they can move up to the 8th seed. They would get to get a home playoff game. And again, if Tennessee gets that home playoff game, anything can happen. So you're rooting like heck for USC to beat Notre Dame. That's one of the 2 big ones. There are 2 possible big games to root for if you're Tennessee. One of them is USC over Notre Dame. The other one, Texas A&M over Texas. If Texas A&M beats Texas, Tennessee moves up to the 8th seed as well. And Texas at 10-2 does not have the resume Tennessee has at 10-2. Both Notre Dame and Texas have lower strength of schedules than Tennessee. They would both be 10-2. Neither has better quality wins than Tennessee. Notre Dame's best win would be, funny enough, Texas A&M, who has 3 losses. Tennessee's best win is also against a 3-loss team, so you can't really claim anything. You have to go by strength of schedule. At that point, Tennessee would move ahead of Texas. So those are the 2 big ones. If both of those teams are upset, if one of those teams is upset, Tennessee's going to get a home playoff game. Now, the desirable path is a 6 or 5 seed in the college football playoff. Why is that the desirable path? You get a home game, and you get to face the 3 or 4 seed in the second round, which will not be the SEC or ACC or the SEC or Big Ten champions, except maybe in this case with Georgia if they win it having 2 losses. So here's the real path. If all 4 happen, if Michigan beats Ohio State, Maryland beats Penn State, USC beats Notre Dame, Texas A&M beats Texas, and Tennessee wins, Tennessee's locked into the most desirable seed possible for the college football playoff, which is the 5th seed. Then they would host the lowest rated conference champion, who's only in because of the auto bid, likely a Big 12 champion, Arizona State or BYU, and likely go face Boise State in the second round. They would have a clear path to the semifinals, the Final 4. The 5 seed is the lucky one, is the desirable one. To get that, they need a giant upset of Michigan over Ohio State or Maryland over Penn State, and then some hope. To get to the 6th seed, they need one of those and some hope if it's Michigan over Ohio State that the committee will favor them. But the real focus is just to get a home game at this point. So USC over Notre Dame or Texas A&M over Texas is what you want. Portions of the program is brought to you by Asia Cafe. Treat yourself to authentic Asian cuisine, handcrafted from guarded family recipes. 5 locations to choose from. AsiaCafe.com. When we come back, we're going to have our last look as we do our picks and bets. Stay tuned. Last look coming up in 2 minutes.
Now in its 45th year, the 2nd and 3rd generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
24 F-150 4x4 Super Crew, $46,997. 24 Ford Transit 250 Cargo Van, $50,950. 24 Ford Maverick XLT Hybrid, $28,929. Local you trust, power you can afford.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your pair.
With our brand new location on Emory Road, Eye Care Optical is bringing East Tennessee's best eye care to your neighborhood. Doctors Johnston and Combs offer unmatched expertise and care without a trip to Knoxville. Eye Care Optical, now in Powell.
Double D Piping provides full-service fire protection on any scale. From residential homes to government facilities, we can assist any customer through design, fabrication, installation, inspection, and demonstration of fire suppression systems. With 30 years of service across 5 states and a full staff with over 40 years experience, our quality can't be beaten. Don't get caught watching what you could have prevented. Call Double D Piping, the absolute best in fire prevention.
All right, welcome back to the program. We're about to get set for our last look. First, I want to remind you guys that the show is brought to you by Work Trucks. We're all about trucks that are actually available, trucks that help you maximize your profits by having the right work vehicle now. Time is money. The perfect work vehicle doesn't break down and has all the space to carry what you need. That's what Work Trucks is intent on offering, while other dealerships just can't do it. Contracting is about time. Work Trucks saves you time with less back and forth trips and trucks that pass the highest standards to be put to work. The process is also quick and easy when choosing a vehicle for Work Trucks. Cargo vans, utility body trucks with the nap hide work bodies installed, pickup trucks of all sizes, and anything special like cranes or dump trucks. Work Trucks supplies vehicles to people just like you and get you back on the road tomorrow. No dealership runaround. If you're a contractor, you need to know Work Trucks, and that's a fact. Service industry, remember Work Trucks. Work Trucks carries the trucks that your business has to have. You need Work Trucks. Clinton Highway in Knoxville and in downtown Birmingham. For the entire inventory, go online to worktrucksllc.com, worktrucksllc.com with an X. Why risk chancing your future and business on the wrong piece of equipment that burns your time? worktrucksllc.com. Work Trucks will also work to make sure that you have the perfect vehicle you have to have. They'll even find a perfect truck, outfit it, and make sure it fits your needs to a T. Work Trucks with an X. LLC.com. Work Trucks with an X. LLC.com. Proud supporters of the Tennessee Vols. All right, guys. I've had a really brutal year. Had a really brutal year of picks and bets and predictions. It's my worst in a long time. The parity in college football took over me more than it's gotten the best of anybody else. So I, with a heavy heart, bring to you my picks and bets of this week. And I want to point out something for people that criticize the SEC. My philosophy is I have to do the spread and the over-under for every SEC and top 25 game this year in a week. Excuse me. For the idea that the SEC schedules aren't tougher than everybody else, more often than not, the SEC's had the least amount of imbalance in their scheduling, and it's still been pretty bad because there have been way more top 25 games in the SEC than in other conferences. As a matter of fact, my whole SEC and top 25 standard has very often involved me just picking SEC games, and more often than not, all the top 25 games in a week are within the SEC. This week, once again, has me picking all SEC games except one game in the Big 12 because the scheduling imbalance has just been so insane. The Big 10, despite playing one extra conference game, has been worse with its scheduling imbalance this year than the SEC. I don't think that was by design. That's just how it worked out. So you can't really criticize the SEC and their lack of scheduling. That's just a fact. I mean, that's just how it's been. All right. So we got, because of all the SEC teams playing this week and that one I named, we've got 11 games that we have to pick, and then I'm going to give you my best bets of the week, my locks, and as a matter of fact, none of those are SEC or top 25 games. So we're going to have a little fun, and maybe I'll throw in a few rivalry games. I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, I'm not picking Michigan, Ohio State. I'm not doing the spread on that one. Michigan's playing better. I think Ohio State's going to win, but I think that one could be tough. I say avoid that as much as possible. But some other games to get to. All right, so let's get to our picks and bets for the SEC. Once again, this is brought to you by our picks and bets are going to be brought to you by the UPS store Hardin Valley, helping small businesses and individuals, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. The UPS store on 10629 Hardin Valley Road. Let's get rolling. with our picks and bets for our last look. Mississippi State at Ole Miss, the Egg Bowl. I'm taking Mississippi State plus 26, and I'm taking the over 61.5. As bad as Mississippi State is, I think their offense has been coming together recently. Their defense is still atrocious, but Jackson Dart's confidence is shook. He threw 2 interceptions at the end of last week, and I don't see Ole Miss as a team that is mentally ready to be able to play this game. I think that everything about them was being a team of mercenaries to go to the college football playoff. They thought they had proven themselves by beating Georgia, and then they collapsed against Florida. They can't handle success. The culture of mercenaries that Lane Kiffin facilitated, that he can relate to, that helps them play well at certain times, is going to have them play poorly in this game. I think they're going to win, but I think Mississippi State's going to cover on Friday in the Egg Bowl. So Mississippi State covers a 26-point spread, even though it's at Ole Miss. It being a rivalry game also affects that. All right, Georgia Tech. I'm sorry, guys, but Georgia's going to cover the 19.5-point spread. You can play the rivalry game all day, but they're at home. Again, I'm going to take the over 53.5 because I think Carson Beck's going to go off. The reason being is Georgia Tech is not a team they're going to sleep on. Georgia Tech is 7-4, and Georgia knows what's at stake here. They know hosting a playoff game is at stake. They're not going to take this one lightly as the last game of the year. Maybe they will looking ahead to the SEC title, but the only reason I think they won't is I don't think they care to be in the SEC title. That's just my thoughts about it. So I think Georgia actually blows out Georgia Tech, and they may hit the over themselves. Tennessee at Vanderbilt. Tennessee is going to cover the 10.5-point spread at Vanderbilt, and the game's going to hit the over because Dylan Sampson is going to run down the throat of that awful defense. More importantly, Diego Pavia is way too banged up. Vanderbilt's way too hurt, so Tennessee is going to destroy them. Their offense, Tennessee's defense is. This is not the same Vanderbilt team that upset Alabama earlier in the year. And it's also worth noting that it's not really going to be a home game for Vanderbilt. As I pointed out to you, Tennessee fans are scooping up those tickets, and that's why the prices are going through the roof. So Vanderbilt and Nashville is going to be maybe a 50-50 split if Vandy fans care that much for the game. But I think Tennessee will have a friendly crowd. They're going to cover the spread because of it. Vanderbilt's too banged up. So Tennessee covers, and the game hits the over with their offense. Clemson and South Carolina. This is a game for two teams on the outside, just barely looking in for the college football playoff. I would say South Carolina could cover because Clemson could be focused on other games that might help them, but South Carolina is going to be doing the same thing. So because of that, I think Clemson's going to cover this one, take Clemson minus 2.5 and take the over 49. Kentucky and Louisville. Kentucky's playing Louisville at home. They're 4-7. I thought they quit on the season, but I think they would take a lot of pride despite quitting on the season. I thought they'd take a lot of pride in playing Louisville for the Governor's Cup, and I think they will. So I say take Kentucky plus 4.5. I think this game actually might be close. I don't know if they'll win, but take them 4.5 and take the over 48.5. I know I'm kind of leaning the over here, actually. We're going to see what happens there. Alabama and Auburn. Alabama has a outside shot at the college football playoff. They're playing Auburn at home, so they're not going to sleep on this one. They're going to win. They're going to cover the 11.5-point spread. The game's going to hit the under because Auburn, the book is out on Jalen Milroe and how bad he is, but Auburn's offense is just bad, period. I don't care about last week. So I think in general, the game's going to hit the under 52.5. I know people are going to talk about how Auburn always gives Alabama a scare. Typically, that's down at Jordan-Hare Stadium, guys. That's not in Tuscaloosa. And with so much to play for, I think Alabama's going to win pretty significantly. Missouri and Arkansas. Look, not a fan of Eli Drinkwitz. Not a fan of the goofball actions he does. But I think his players respond well to it. And because of that, I think they're going to cover the 3-point spread against the Arkansas team that is just relaxed and happy that they got bowl eligible by beating Louisiana Tech. So I don't think Arkansas is putting the pressure on themselves that they need to this week. So they're going to look a little ugly. They'll make this a slugfest. The game will hit the under 54.5, but I think Missouri is going to cover the 3-point spread. All right, Florida State and Florida. Florida is a significantly better team. They're 6-5. They're thrilled about beating LSU. They should win this game to go 7-5. DJ Lagway back in makes them look like a Heisman contender, but Florida State's defense has not been the problem this year. Their offense has been the problem. I think Florida State's defense could keep this game close playing at home. Also, Florida's got a hangover by just a thrilling tale of unlikely reaching a bowl game under Billy Napier, which saves his job. Those distractions could lead to Florida State covering. So Florida State plus 15. I think Florida wins, but I'm seeing along the lines of like 21-14. So Florida wins, but take Florida State plus 15 and the under 46. All right, two more. Big 12 matchup. We're going to do a Big 12 matchup and a once Big 12 matchup that's now an SEC matchup. So the current Big 12 matchup, Kansas State and Iowa State. Kansas State, I say take them plus 2.5 at Iowa State. It's been a period of upsets in the Big 12, and this is something that if they do this, and nobody can complain about Alabama being where they're at, but I think Kansas State might cover the 2.5-point spread against Iowa State, because I think Iowa State is going to be focused on a lot of other things happening in that moment, and Iowa State is spending too much time, one of those 2-loss teams that could be spending too much time jockeying about where they belong. So I actually think Kansas State is also just a little bit better. So I say take Kansas State plus 2.5. I don't say take them outright because it's at Iowa State, but I am saying take Kansas State plus 2.5. And I think it's going to hit the over 51. One of those typical night game Big 12 scoring games. And a former Big 12 matchup that's now an SEC matchup. Texas A&M and Texas. Texas is a 5.5-point favorite. Texas A&M just lost to Auburn focusing on this game. They're not going to let this one slip away. They want to beat Texas badly. It's a rekindled rivalry. Texas A&M bolted the Big 12 because of the special treatment for Texas. They're mad that Texas followed them to the SEC in the first place. They bolted 13 years ago. Now Texas has followed them. Texas A&M is going to try to get revenge. They're playing this game at home. They're capable of giving them a fight. Texas has some issues at quarterback. So take the under 48.5. And yes, take Texas A&M plus 5.5. But I'm hedging. I don't know if Texas A&M wins outright. But that's a game worth watching Saturday night. Before we get to our best bets, I want to point out that our last look is brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn.
To visit cctis.com. The information you need is easy to access, and setting an appointment is as simple as clicking the tab. Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, and Eye Care Optical at cctis.com. Simply the best.
All right, our best bets. I told you guys I'm staying away from Michigan, Ohio State. There's too much going there, but there's a lot of other fun ones to get to. So let's start with Washington and Oregon. Oregon is clinched the Big Ten title game. They now get to face a Washington team that knocked them out of the playoff by beating them twice last year. They just squeaked by to beat Wisconsin 2 Saturdays ago, 16-13. Coming off a bye, the game at Alton Stadium, I think the way Washington makes this a physical game, I think take the under 50.5. I do. I think take the under 50.5. I think Washington and Oregon will be in a slugfest. That's my best under of the week. My over of the week is, believe it or not, Notre Dame USC. Notre Dame at USC. I think USC playing at home. I think the Lincoln Riley offense figuring some things out. I think the over-under is just a little bit too low on this because I think it'll be a close game, so they'll be going back and forth. I think Notre Dame, gun to my head, I think Notre Dame probably will win like 31-24, but I definitely think take the over in this. I think 51.5 is too low. All right. Best cover of the week. Indiana. They're going to cover the 28.5-point spread against Purdue. Purdue is awful. Indiana's on a mission to prove that they belong. They are thrilled that they're still in the college football playoff race after that loss. So Kurt Cignetti's team is going to be excited, and they're going to take it out on a horrible Purdue team. So I think Indiana covers that insanely large 28.5-point spread. Yes, take Indiana minus 28.5. I'm not lying. My underdog of the week, not to win, but to cover the spread, is Memphis plus 14 at Tulane. We're forgetting this, but Memphis is playing for as much of a college football playoff spot as Tulane is. And so if Memphis does end up winning this game, guys, that game is to go play for they're not going to go play for the American Athletic Conference title. Tulane and Army are already doing that. But there is a little bit more for them to play for in this scenario. If they beat Tulane, and then Tulane and Army play each other, and Army loses another game, which is very possible, you can see Memphis try to jockey for that spot, that group of 5 spot, without even being a conference champion, especially if UNLV loses. Although I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth, aren't I? Now that I think about it, you have to be a top 5 conference champion. I apologize. Correction. I stand corrected. I still think Memphis covers plus 14. I still take Memphis plus 14 on this at Tulane. I think that's giving Ryan Silverfield something to play for. They'd love to wreck Tulane's chances. So Memphis plus 14 at Tulane, and Tulane is thinking ahead to the AAC title game. So that's still my plus of the week. That's still my underdog plus of the week. What's my super dog of the week, though? Arizona State is now the top Big 12 team, and nobody in the Big 12 seems to want to get that spot. I got Arizona beating Arizona State, guys. Arizona State is 8.5-point favorites. Arizona is 4-7 on the year. Arizona State's 9-2, but Arizona's at home. And I actually think that Arizona is going to shock Arizona State to win this weekend. It's what they'd love nothing more than to ruin Arizona State's chances at playing in the college football playoff. That's what they're going all in on, whereas Arizona State has to focus on this, plus the Big 12 title game, plus hope that they stay in a certain seeding spot. So, yeah, no, I got Arizona upsetting Arizona State. That's my super dog of the week. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn your notifications on, and please, if you want more exclusive coverage on our Patreon page, join Hooker's Corner. We just posted the link right there. You too can be a John. Join Hooker's Corner. I'm going to pull up the QR code here in just a second. Sorry, we are just having a little bit of trouble pulling it up, but I'm going to pull up the QR code. As a matter of fact, though, here we go. You can get recruiting and prizes and more, just $9.98 a month. You too can be a John. Hooker's Corner. Again, stay up to date too on Sports Treasures. The link for that is right here. The QR code's there. They update their Facebook page every day. Talked to you about that earlier. Sports Treasures. That's Sports Treasures Facebook on Facebook. Thank you guys for tuning in with me this week. I know it's been a little bit difficult with just me hosting the show. You guys were a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun talking with you guys. We're going to be off until Saturday when Tennessee plays Vanderbilt. Until then, guys, you all have an amazing Thanksgiving. Enjoy this time with your family. And from a football perspective, be thankful that we're getting a great, fun last week of regular season games in college football. I still have my issues with the way the season is formatted right now, but it's fun to watch. With Caleb Calhoun,